Hello everyone and welcome to another video, where today we're continuing the Cultivating Wild Edibles series. Specifically, I want to get some more samples of certain plants, and for today, I want to get some seeds from these potato beans. Now unfortunately it wasn't the easiest thing getting samples of all the plants I wanted to test out. As I've talked about before, it was a terrible year for wild edibles, and that sort of got reflected in my efforts here. But it's not all bad news. There were several plants that I was able to obtain samples of, and certain ones that didn't have many of the same issues other species had this year. For example, this is a potato bean seed pod. You can see the little seeds within. And as the name suggests, this is a very good wild edible. It produces very large edible tubers. That's not all though. Other parts of the plant are also edible, and this plant even fixes its own nitrogen, so it doesn't need any nitrogen-based fertilizer like other crops. Now, of course, as with everything, there are downsides. This plant is quite slow growing, for one, and it takes more than a year to harvest. But all the more reason to get started now on this project. Now, in terms of acquiring these seeds, opening the pod is very easy, but finding them can be a little difficult. They tend to camouflage into the environment quite a bit. If you were to also do this, I would suggest going out actually in the summer and making a mental note of where all the plants are. You can't miss them. The flowers are really showy. So once you have that mental note, you can go back to where they used to be and find the seed pods. Because honestly, if you don't have that prior knowledge, it's going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Or actually, more accurately, a hay in a needle stack sometimes. Now to open these, it's pretty simple. They have two sides and a center seam. Press down on the center seam, and the pod splits open. Careful not to do this too harshly, or they will fly everywhere. Sort of scrape it down, and there you go. Here's a close-up shot at the beans I have so far. Notice they have a very interesting shriveled look to them. Apparently they're supposed to look like that. Here's an even closer look at the seeds for anyone who's interested. Also, when these pods do open naturally, they do so by twisting themselves apart, and that tension is present when you squeeze down on the pod, so be aware of that. It can cause stuff to fly all over the place. However, when it comes to wild edibles, unless you're really trying to survive and you need every calorie you can get, it's always a good thing to let a few fall to the wayside. Also, as far as these beans go, when they're green, apparently they're edible, but I couldn't find any solid evidence that the sort of desiccated, shriveled up, dry version you get during the late fall and winter is any good to eat. And usually if you can't find any information on it, it's probably not a good idea to be the primary source. Alright, that looks pretty good. Certainly the most I've ever seen all in one place. Looks a bit underwhelming because of the basket I chose, but I couldn't find a smaller one, so oh well. I could definitely go and try and find more. I know they're out there, but, you know, this is good enough for the purposes I have in mind. All that's left to do now is to take these inside and store them with the rest of the samples. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed. See ya.